it doesn't get any more real than this. I promised you real topics, real conversations, real growth. We're going to do it today. So this is the episode where you need to, put your earmuffs on, your office mates, your kids, your pets, so that you can probably hear this privately, because we're going to talk in a very real way about the sensitive topic of sex and our relationship with other people in it, our own self-expression of it, our own self-awareness around it, and our own pleasures, and all those kinds of things. So this will not be our only episode about the topic, but I thought I would start here because I myself have had a crazy journey with this. So just to give you a little background and a little perspective from where I'm coming from, and keep in mind your story might be completely different. But it's not so much that our stories need to be the same, it's that we find a place within the story where we resonate. So you could have something very different happen to you, but you resonate with the sort of emotional outcome that I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to be super transparent and very open with you about this, and I'm going to trust that you're going to respect that with me. So I got married at the ripe old age of 18. So I married my high school sweetheart. I did not have sex before I got married. I also grew up in a very conservative Christian evangelical culture. So I had moved quite a few times, so more than one church for sure by the time I got married, but all the same, kind of color where, sex is a sin outside of marriage, and you never, so of course, you don't have sex outside of marriage. We weren't so conservative as to think it was only for the purpose of procreation, which there are those that do, but we were liberal in that a married couple could have fun having sex and not have to just do it to have a baby. So, wow. But I had a perspective of before I was engaged at 17, my senior year of high school. It's so ridiculous when I say this now out loud. But anyway, I dated quite a few guys in high school. I loved flirting. I loved kissing and being touched and all that. And I felt I didn't have words for this really at the time, but what I would describe now is very sexual. Like I could practically come from a good kisser, So I was super excited about having sex on my wedding night. And it was awful. It was awful for many reasons that weren't really either of our fault. It was a lot of ignorance. And of course, the people around us kind of fostered that ignorance. I mean, my mom certainly didn't tell me anything about having sex, except I could tell she didn't like it, and I'm sure his didn't say anything to him. And our little marriage counseling with our pastor, nothing about it, only that he wanted to make sure we were both virgins, so ignorance is not bliss in this topic. And so, oh my gosh, what a surprise it was to me when, one, it hurt like hell, and two, so big surprise, I didn't enjoy it. So, we had a great honeymoon. I think we took 10 days or something. We were in Hawaii. It was great. But we had sex a couple times, and I'm like already now feeling guilty because I don't want to. So I'm the one who wants to say no. He's happy to anytime, all the time. And because it hurts and I didn't like it. So why would you want to do that again? But I mean, I knew that wasn't right. I knew I was supposed to like it. So, and I know this happens to many, at least women, girls, when they lose their virginity, is like, wait, you mean that was what everybody was talking about? So and I'm sure it happens to guys too. So, there's just that when our reality doesn't match the expectation of something like that, that's such a big deal. So that got me off on the wrong foot. And then that just kind of continued for us in our marriage and our relationship. And there were a lot of other issues besides this, all of which I was pretty ignorant of until I was in my late 20s. We just got in this habit of We had very little sex. I would say no, 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 until I felt like I just couldn't say no again, and I'd have sex one time. Always missionary, never oral sex. And again, total ignorance. So like at the time, there was no foreplay, there was no nothing, and we didn't really even understand that, okay? So after a few years of that, I started doing some reading and research well within the confines of my super conservative Christianness of what's going on in my body. Why do I not like it? Now, I took it all as very much a what's wrong with me, because the sort of conscious dialogue between my husband and I was, well, he wants to and I don't. So obviously it's because of me. It's my problem. Now, I'm much older and wiser, and I know I don't care what your topic is. That is not the answer. It always takes two to tango, and even if one person is, whatever, more responsible or whatever, the other person is still playing into that. Even in the same way, I'll totally flip this now, in the way that I played into his verbal and emotional abuse. So it was never okay for him to be verbally or emotionally abusive to him, but I let him. I didn't complain about it. I pretty much just, cowered and kept my mouth shut and did what he wanted me to do when we were disagreeing. So that, it's not my fault he was abusive, but I was playing into it. So it wasn't exactly his fault, except he wasn't a good lover, but neither of us really understood that I didn't want to have sex. But he's part of this couple, so, there's a lot he could have done also. But we just got stuck in these positions of, it's my problem, it's about me, I'm the one who has something wrong, he's fine. And I want you to think, if you're in any sort of long-term relationship, how many things you might get in like that, and they kind of start to be topics you just quit talking about. Well, that's a really problematic thing when you're talking about sex, because it's not really a part of your marriage you can ignore. Also, because of these things and others, we really didn't have any emotional intimacy. And I have noticed through my years, and especially as a coach, but even before I was a coach, just with friends that I had and things like that, people who struggle in their sexual relationship are usually struggling in their emotional intimacy as well. Not always, because there are certain things physically or certain addictions or whatever that can definitely affect your sexual relationship that doesn't have anything to do with that. But like, there's nobody I've ever met who was unfaithful to their spouse who wasn't a sex addict. The marriage wasn't already in trouble. People don't typically go looking for an affair or even pick up and keep moving forward with the flirtations of another person unless they're already unhappy. So I did not understand how the lack of emotional intimacy was impacting our sexual relationship. So I just kind of, went along with this unconscious belief between us that it was my fault. So I just thought I was frigid. I thought, okay, I guess I don't like sex. Like, I kind of remember how all that juicy goodness felt when I was a teenager, just kissing guys. But I must not like it because I don't like it. And, I'm not having any fun in it and I don't want to do it. So I must be frigid. It's me. It's something wrong with me. Well, then, to complicate matters, or to add to that, my willingness to sort of accept that it's my problem, when I was, early 30s, 31, 32, something, I had a flashback memory of being sexually abused as a little girl. So, that really complicated it. Now, for me, I was already in therapy, and so that was great. I had a great therapist who helped me through all that. And, of course, that took a lot of time. And so, of course, for a while, I didn't want to even talk about having sex with my husband. And he was fine with that. He was very, he understood that, I've just remembered this terrible trauma and I'm going to need a break. So we just didn't even talk about it for, 6 months or something. It was a while. And I started doing my healing. But the problem with that was, like, in a way, it made me understand, this must be why I don't like sex, because I've had this terrible experience. And it feeling like a violation is often how I felt. And then I would talk myself out of it because I'm like, this is my husband. He's not violating me, you know. But that's the intellect, not my emotions. And when we're having sex with somebody that we don't really want to have sex with and we don't have emotional intimacy with, so it's more obligation, it's very easy for that to feel violating, even though it could be a spouse or somebody that, in essence, you've given your consent to have sex, but emotionally you're doing it under obligation. So in a way that helped me understand where I was coming from, but in a way it also just added to the kind of, yep, it's my problem, that's what, you know, I'm screwed up, I don't like sex, I got abused, you know, blah blah. Well, for several reasons, mostly because of my husband's emotional and verbal treatment of me, we end up getting divorced. So I'm like 35. I've had sex with one man. I don't like it, you know, right? And I remember when we split up just thinking, woohoo, I don't ever have to worry about having sex again. I don't have to say no again. You know, like that was like part of the silver lining, right? Because it was so heartbreaking to me that our marriage was over. But then, you know, fast forward 6 months or so, and I'm like, well, of course, I'm only 35. I'm going to date again, and it's the 90s, and if I date anybody for very long, they're going to want to have sex. And, you know, even from my now about the time I was leaving my husband, I was also leaving the church. So I'm dropping some of that super conservative stuff. But, I mean, it's been part of my programming my whole life. And so, you know, I didn't just drop it all in a moment. Anyway, I was sure God was going to punish me and give me AIDS because, you know, that was a thing in the 80s. Conservative Christians thought God gave people AIDS to punish them for their sexual behavior. So that's disgusting. But anyway, that's what I was living in. That's the religious culture I was a part of and came out of. And so anyway, I had all kinds of fears about it, but I'm like, it's not practical to think I'm going to actually go my whole life with no sex. So I'd really like it, you know? So and not everyone has to do this way, but for me, I knew I really didn't know anything about, like, just physically, mechanically, you know, how to have good sex. I'd never had any. I'd never had an orgasm. Well, I had had orgasms I did for myself, but not with him. No, I had no orgasms with a partner at that point in my life. And I didn't even know, you know, I hope you're sitting down. I didn't even realize I could masturbate until I was like 26. It was after my fourth child was born. So I was somewhere in that 26, 27-year-old age. I didn't even know I could do that. So anyway, I meet this guy. We're in community theater together and we start dating. And he was so patient with me and I was so afraid. I was afraid I'd have a flashback about the sexual abuse. I was afraid I would be a terrible lover. I was afraid I didn't know, you know, wouldn't know what to do, how to handle it, like all kinds of things. I was so afraid, and he was so patient and so delightful. And thank goodness for me, also an excellent lover. So like we had sex one time and I was like, wait a minute, I think I do like this, you know? So it was like, I have given him the credit many times, without using his name because I'll let him keep his identity, you know, anonymous. But like it was like turning on a light switch, and suddenly I loved something and thought it was tons of fun that I had never even enjoyed. And so I'm here to say, in part, no matter where you are, maybe you don't think you're frigid, you just don't like having sex. Or, you know, you think there's something wrong with you and how your body works sexually. Like most everything we have, as women anyway, have ever been told about our bodies and how they work sexually is wrong. Like just misinformation, okay? So because of patriarchy, nobody medically was studying women and women's bodies until much more recently. And, you know, it wasn't even until this, I guess, Johnson's, who were they? Oh, Kinsey. I think they started doing their research on sexuality, or whatever they would call it, having sex, maybe in the 60s, but like, this is my lifetime. Like, this is very recently is the only time there's been research, and most of that has been more man focused as far as pleasure goes and all those kinds of things. So I highly recommend, I think I have it right here, a great book that I don't see right here. Anyway, it's called Come As You Are. And it's a fabulous book for women and for men to read. It's primarily about women and their sexual pleasures, how it works, like how few of us orgasm from intercourse. It's almost no one. The statistics are very small for any woman who will have an orgasm during intercourse, where that's sort of always been the model. And what it seems like when you see sex on TV and whatever is that, first of all, everybody's coming at the same time, and, we're all coming from intercourse, and that's just not true. It's not statistically true. So Come As You Are is a great book to understand your own body, and if you're a dude, to understand the body, if obviously if you're heterosexual, to understand the body of the woman that you want to give pleasure to. So there's a lot of that. I had so much to learn, and when I did it, and this is kind of silly maybe, but what I had easy access to, well, fairly easy, was porn. Like, at that time, there wasn't a book like Come As You Are, okay? And I had 4 little kids at home. I couldn't have had a book like that laying around anyway. We didn't have e-readers at that point. So of course, we didn't have internet. We didn't have internet, period, let alone internet porn. So I would buy these videos. For those of you who are older, you remember this. We had videos and then DVDs, of course, from Adam and Eve was where I bought most of mine, that were porn. And then I kept them hidden away, right? So my kids would never find them. And anyway, I learned a lot through that, just to see what people are doing. Not that I thought it was all exactly real, right? Because who does? I wasn't that ignorant. But it gave me a sense of what the bodies are doing, And so that was super helpful for me. I always said it was my Sesame Street of sex. Because when you're 35, 36, and you don't know anything about having sex, you've never had an orgasm with a person, like, that's intimidating all on its own. So I didn't know what 69 was. I heard these people talking about how much they love 69, and my best friend was with me, and when we left, I'm like, okay, I get that was something sexual, but I don't know what it is. You got to tell me, So I was super ignorant. So wherever you are in your journey, the point of this today is, one, if you've been blaming yourself and think that something is wrong with you, that's not likely so. There are very few conditions that really inhibit or prohibit our sexual pleasure. It's just that we have not been taught how to access it, how to feel comfortable enough with ourselves to express it. Because that's a whole nother part, is to drop that judgment enough, even for our own bodies, enough to just love that our body is capable of this kind of pleasure. And so, like, what does make me feel really good, right? Do I like to be touched here, or do I like to be touched on my wrist, or on my, like, ears? A lot of people are, big on having their ears touched. I can't stand it. I mean, you get your face up there in my ears and I will lose my mind, So we all have our different erogenous zones, and we just have to explore to find them and to know our own bodies, so that we can move from that idea of I'm frigid and I don't like this, or it doesn't work for me, or whatever the story is you might be telling yourself, to actually, I can find a way that this is really pleasurable for me, that this is really fun for me, that I can explore my own self in another way to express myself freely without any judgment. And it is the most glorious thing. Like, this is just one of the biggest changes that happened in my life that I'm so grateful for, because and grateful to me, I mean, I'm grateful to my awesome lover and the ones that came after that as well. but I had to be the one who allowed myself, who like gave myself permission to see it in a different way, that it didn't have to be the way it had been the last 16 years of my marriage, that I could find something different in it. And that is so true of every aspect of our lives. So I would love to hear what resonates with you in this, where you might relate to the story, you know, even if your story is different, or some other area like this that you've struggled with. I can do another video on it. If for some reason you don't feel comfortable putting it in the comments, because this is obviously an intimate topic, feel free to email me. My email is always in the description, brenda@brendaflorida.com. So that's easy, brenda@brendaflorida.com. And then book a 15-minute call if you want. I've coached some people through their challenges sexually in their relationship with themselves, their own body expression, all those kinds of things. And you can tell from my story that I've sort of been through the gamut to where I've had a very adventurous, some would say scandalous, love life in my single life. You know, I spent 20 years, I'm still single. I've spent over 20 years being single. And so I've done a lot of great stuff. And I've done it from a very conscious perspective, because by the time I kind of woke up to that, right, I was waking up to the other areas of my life, like people pleasing and the willingness to be with somebody who's verbally and emotionally abusive to me. And I've changed so many patterns that I kind of woke up sexually in a time where I was also waking up a lot consciously. So I'll leave you with that. I hope to hear from you. Excuse me. Book a 15-minute call if you want to chat about it. Drop something in the comments below. I talked so long, I drained my throat out. Or just email me, and we'll see if whatever's going on for you, I can help you crack open that door to more freedom and more pleasure. I'm Brenda Florida, certified life coach, and I will see you in my next video. Subscribe to the channel so you get notifications when my new videos come out.